Let's now shift focus to India's rising imports and declining exports, which has pushed the current account deficit to a 9-year high to 4.4% of GDP. The deficit stood at more than $36 billion in the second quarter of FY23. The number in Q2 is double of $18 billion recorded in the first quarter. It is also nearly 4 times higher than the $9.7 billion reported in Q2 last year. With this, current account deficit for the first half of the fiscal also rose to 3.3% of the GDP. For the second quarter, the CAD is at 4.4% of GDP. Let me now go across to Rajiv Kumar, economist and former vice chairman at NITI Aayog. Mr. Kumar, the merchandise trade deficit is the culprit here. How concerned are you about these current account deficit numbers?
Hello, Parikshit, and thanks for having me. On the current account deficit, I think it's just a blip in this quarter, and I think it should settle down again. And I say this because what happened is that the exports have been hampered, have sort of faced the poor conditions in the global markets, and therefore their growth has been very slow. But our imports have continued to rise, both on account of our economic activity as also the higher commodity prices, which are the oil prices as well as the other metal prices. So I think this is just, I should think it's a temporary phenomenon because unfortunately our economic activity is likely to slow down, which would mean that the imports, would not rise as fast as they have done in the past, and exports also with the FTAs coming along, etc., would begin to rise. So this is just a one-quarter phenomenon, and I hope we'll be back to more sustainable levels in the coming quarters.
Right. How do you think we will fare with our current account deficit in Q3 and Q4?
I think we'll be back to about, I would have thought about 3% in Q3, and then my take would be about 2.8, 2.5, 2.8% in Q4, because that's the, that's where we'll get advantage of the cheaper oil deliveries from Russia, so that thing will settle down. Our food prices are global; they would be down. The commodity prices are beginning to weaken because of the Chinese growth story beginning to is faltering now at this point of time. And hopefully our services imports and our remittances, it's a robust segment of our foreign exchange earnings even now. I think they will pick up even more. So the current account deficit overall for the fiscal year 22-3 after the Q3-4 would, I think, come to about 3.3%. And, it's a tad higher than what we consider to be the safe level of 2.5% and below. But I think given our foreign exchange reserves, given the overall resilience and the likely foreign portfolio flows, etc., I think these are well within manageable limits.
Right. In terms of imports, we've seen a 30% rise in imports, and non-oil imports have also risen by 25%. Do you feel that this is a cause for concern? There are some measures that we need to take in order to increase our exports, considering that the global environment is not going to be very conducive as far as export growth is concerned?
Yeah, so the two-part answer to this, Parikshit, which is one, that we don't need to take any sort of unusual steps on the import side to curb imports, etc. No point raising tariffs and or non-tariff barriers and so on, because these imports reflect necessary imports. Not too many of them are in the nature of high consumption imports, etc. What we need to focus on, and which is why I'm glad to see the Ministry of Commerce now in active, some action mode on signing our free trade agreements or fast track agreements, is to focus on our exports and our export earnings. Now, it has been India's situation that our exports rise when the rate of growth. We haven't been able to improve what we need to focus on. And I think the way to do it would be to focus on a few sectors where we think we have the competitive and the comparative advantage, and to try and get a much higher share in the world markets for those particular industries and sectors. So I think that's the focus that we now need to do and now need to have. I've been arguing this for a while now, and I think time has come that we get this action in place of focusing on selected export winners and ensuring that they double or triple their share in world markets.
Right. Are there any particular sectors that you would like to flag off? Because when we compare to Vietnam, Vietnam today has FTAs with 56 economies, and that does put the Vietnamese economy at a considerable advantage compared to its Southeast Asian peers. Give us a sense of some of the sectors that we need to focus on in terms of increasing exports, the markets that we need to try and seize, and some of the measures that could be taken in that direction, Mr. Kumar?
Yeah, so, Parikshit, these are pretty much well-established winners, and then there are some which I think we should convert to winners. See, clearly there is a gems and jewelry sector, which has been there, has been a winner for a very long time. So that's one, but that increases our gold imports as well, or diamond imports as well. So but that's one. Secondly, we've lost considerable market share in our garment exports, and there is no reason for us to lose market shares to our neighbors like Bangladesh or Vietnam, etc. Now, Bangladesh does have a sort of a fair, a preferential treaty with the EU, but then our market for our garments like West Asia or the US and Europe or high-end designer markets, I think, can be really captured. And we have to reverse the decline in our garment exports in a major way, because that's one sector which needs significant focusing, because it has been and it can be a winner both for export earning and for employment generation. The third, I would say, is the high-end, high-tech manufacturing exports, not the low-tech ones, because we can't compete with the Vietnams and the southern Chinas of the world, the large assembly lines, etc. But our high-tech manufacturing exports of, for example, complex forgings or castings, or even some equipment, including defense equipment, can be made into a winner. Now, I think that's something that we need to really work on. But that's again is a major player. Now, finally, I would say that we have been very conservative on our mineral exports, on our and in some cases like iron ore, we are a very rich. We've got very rich reserves that can last us for 400 years plus. But we have taken a policy stance that these reserves are meant only for our domestic producers. There'd never be shortage of supply for our domestic producers, and we can actually increase those exports. So those are some of the areas where I think we can do much better in exports and goods. And then apart from that, of course, our services, not just software, but also education and health services, I think can be very important in this regard.
Mr. Kumar, I'd also like to ask you about another story, and let's just take our viewers through it. We're learning from our sources that the government is reviewing its stance on investments from China. Yes, the investments of China, as per restrictions imposed in April 2020, continue to be under government route. But at the same time, the government is now actively looking at Chinese JVs, which can benefit us in a strategic way, in a manufacturing way. We want to focus on certain intermediate stage products where we don't have expertise right now. We want the likes of Apple to manufacture iPads in India. And the feedback is that we will need to have JVs between Indian entities and entities like BYD as well, if we want that manufacturing to take place. Do you feel this is an important step that the government must take investments, have joint ventures with China where it serves our strategic and manufacturing interests right now?
Parikshit, this is actually music to my ears. I've been arguing for this, in support of this, for a very long time, because Chinese companies China itself has huge capital surplus. They keep exporting this surplus abroad, and I think see no reason at all for us not to have these joint ventures and invite investment from Chinese companies. Because I think it's important to have them put their money in the ground here, because that will also benefit our overall relations. I've always argued to keep our security relations and our economic relations with China separate, and and treat them as two different entities or two different tracks. And I think this will be very useful. In fact, in the last couple of years, the reverse has happened, which is companies like the Great Wall Motors of China have closed, who had bought the entire Ford plant in India, had shut shop and gone away. And I think this is time now to review this. And I'm glad to hear that the government is reconsidering this, because we can get investment, we can get technology, and we can get also some markets, in this case. So I think I take it as very good news, because there is no reason for the Chinese investment to go to all other Asian economies and not come to the largest Asian economy our largest Asian economy, which is what we are.
So we also believe that in 2020, BYD was keen to have a joint venture in India to have iPad manufacturing, but that could not really take off because of the geopolitical environment after the Galwan clashes. Do you feel that we have somehow lost out in the global China plus one strategy to Vietnam? Today, Vietnam has emerged as the top alternative when it comes to high-tech electronic manufacturing, and the bulk of companies who want to have alternate supply chains are looking to Vietnam, be it Samsung, be it Apple, be it Google for that matter, or be it Microsoft.
Well, we can and we should give Vietnam a run for its money. We had, for example, Apple, as a NITI Aayog, partly instrumental in bringing Apple to produce their iPhones and their other, and then their chargers, etc., in their plants in Pune, and then have, I think now about more than $300 million worth of exports. And their vendors have been trying to shift, but have faced some resistance because of geopolitical reasons. I think this China plus one thing, which is very clear that people, companies were looking for an alternate location for their manufacturing. India must take advantage of that and offer terms which are good enough to attract these companies here. These companies are not Chinese companies; these are foreign companies producing in China, whether it's Taiwanese or Korean or Japanese, and there were efforts made already by our embassies, I know, in Tokyo and in Seoul, to do so, and I think these efforts need to be redoubled. Because we should create the right conditions, whether it's zones or whether how to reduce the project risk or the land acquisition risk, etc. And I think if we do that, and maybe the buck will stop with the state governments, and that is where I think we should put our focus on. The central government should encourage the state to, in some sense, compete for these investments. Because now it's the right time, and I think India should make use of this opportunity and to attract large-scale manufacturing. The PLI scheme, major part of the reason for the PLI, which we launched from NITI Aayog, was this. And I hope that will succeed. And if it does, then we will be able to compete with the Vietnams of the world to attract this investment into India.
All right, Mr. Kumar, thank you very much for joining us with that comprehensive view on India's current account deficit, which is at record levels over the last 9 years, and also how India is reviewing its strategy when it comes to Chinese investments. We're going to take a short break at this point, but don't go anywhere. We've got important stories coming up. India's real estate developers are turning to tech-driven tools called PropTech to drive sales and boost conversion. Also, a special